Today, I really wanted to kind of do things slightly differently in that I wanted to focus on collaboration. I wanted to focus on how I believe I try to do work that has kind of entry points, and entry points that include audienceship, that include performance, being in the work, being outside of the work, and also being collaborators and doing the work together. And sometimes collaboration looks very different from piece to piece. And so I kind of wanted to have that tilt for today. And so I'm going to start sharing my screen. And here you see a presentation. So I'm going to go over a bit, just quickly over a couple works, and then I'm going to dive in specifically to the work that I did for the previous 2 years up until this summer, where everything changed for everybody with the city of Miami Beach. And we'll really kind of get into that, and that's going to be the meat today. So this work I like to go back to because it was a kind of first work where I really kind of got political with what I was doing, and dove into a societal issue kind of head on. This work was called Flood Relief. It was brought to life in 2017, and it took place on the side of Museum Park, which is in downtown Miami, and the building you see there is the PERS Art Museum. And I'm going to show you a video now of what the work looked and felt like, and also kind of have it in the back of your mind the performers who are also operators. I'm one of them, but there's also 2 others, and Jenna is one of them who's going to be speaking a bit later. And you'll see her pop up again and again. She's a long-term collaborator. So what you saw in that video is 3 industrial water pumps that are in some cases used during emergency flooding situations. This is happening less and less as city, particularly the city of Miami Beach and increasingly others such as New York City more and more are installing much larger pumps, and they're kind of hiding them underground. But occasionally you'll see these on the streets, and also they're used on construction sites, especially in low-lying areas like South Florida. So what I did here was to repurpose them and just employ them as fountains, basically. So they would pump up water from Biscayne Bay and shoot the water back out into the bay. And so myself and 2 other operators would operate these pumps periodically over the course of a week. And we kind of developed a choreography with them. And we also kind of developed a performance with them where we would kind of had a character of sorts. You could say it was a kind of museum and park goer meets arts patron meets kind of blasé millennial. And that kind of went up. We turned that up a notch even further for a night performance where we were kind of dressed to the nines, and operated the pumps while a classically trained pianist was playing kind of in tandem in kind of choreography, but also in opposition. And this program also included a poetry reading, and included a reading of creative fiction, and it included a dance performance also by Jenna Bell. And so this is a good example of how my work started to kind of become a lot more invested in a kind of exhibition organizing. Aspects of it are curatorial, and more you'll see this kind of become more of a hybrid and kind of envelop each other in later works. So this is a site, a historically designated site in Little Haiti, which is a kind of gentrifying area of Miami. This is the oldest building in north of the main street, Flagler, in downtown Miami. And a collaborator, Aisha Singh, and Aisha is based in New Delhi. We proposed and got approval after many months, meetings with developers, meetings with the Historic Preservation Board of Miami. We put together the work you see here. This work is called Provisional Obstruction, Little Haiti, Miami. It's the second iteration of the work that me and Aisha have been doing together, the first of which was in the Pilsen neighborhood of Chicago. And this temporary structure employs scaffolding, and it employs images of architecture. In this case, and in the case of Chicago, it's images of the architecture that is behind it, that is already present. The images you see here are a mixture of images of the building as it is, as well as historical images that we found at History Miami. And so it's kind of similar to the previous work that I showed you. It's employing temporary infrastructure that's used to mitigate or to fix or to kind of, and also suggest that something is being done, and also that you don't have to worry. We're kind of taking care of things for you. Simultaneously, in this instance, it's also a signifier of change, of gentrification. And this site in particular is a very contentious site of a mega development that is on its way, and incorporating this building. Here's some more shots. You can see it's kind of a collage of sorts with the images. And of course, again, it included programming. The two images at the top are the kind of opening program, which also included a walking tour of local history by a local guide. We had a picnic, which is the bottom right, which was also our artist lecture. And during Miami Art Week, we had another artist, Jamie Henthorne, based in Denver, project a video work. And so I'm going to start kind of getting more into the work now. So this is a project, the initial project that I did when I started what turned out to be a 2-year partnership with the city of Miami Beach, specifically their Department of Environment and Sustainability. And for this project, what you're seeing is approximately 6,000 sandbags, all filled with sand, and the bags themselves, all borrowed from the city of Miami Beach, after which they were returned to the city. We filled the bags one by one with the help of volunteers. I was pretty much there every day for just over a month. And so I think, again, that's like kind of a form of engagement that's really important to me. In this case, like very kind of one-on-one, making the work together, volunteering. And also I, for whatever reason, always really loved this object in the top right corner, which was this kind of fake construction sign that also was a billboard. And the reverse of it was kind of for the volunteers themselves, and included a library, of course, a first aid kit, and a lot of other things to kind of ground us there, so to speak. As the work was being built, we would pause. And so it's called Sand Amphitheater Theater Arena because it happens in 3 parts. The first being the amphitheater, and that's what you see here. My guess would be that at this point we were at about like 1,500 sandbags. And so this first kind of program, each program had a particular theme that went along with the pause of construction and programming. In this case, it was historical based. We had some historians, and we had Elizabeth, who's actually on the call. She'll be talking to us later. We had a house band. Once again, that's Jenna, who's the lead singer of the house band. They would play every time. Their band is called Donzi. Here you also see Samuel Tommy, who's a local member of the Miccosukee tribe, doing a kind of a lecture and land acknowledgement. Glenda Romaldo in the bottom right corner reading some poetry that was commissioned to be written and then read here. And Laurentia Strauss, who would kind of pop up on 2 occasions with her Bubble Pops project. And this is us on the last day. So this is as large as the structure got. You can see just in the far back, just behind Elizabeth, actually, there's still bags there. So it was essentially like we didn't know how big it was. I mean, we had a kind of goal in mind, but it was the size was directly correlated to the amount of effort that the community was able to put into the project, and how much myself and everyone could give. And so I felt it was as large as it needed to be. And this project in many ways was kind of the initial diving into Miami Beach. The issue of sand in particular was what happens when you start to pull back and you pull back further and you're trying to really get to the bottom, in this case, literally, the geological bottom of why we have the problems that we have in Miami Beach and honestly in many coastal areas around the world. And in Miami Beach's case, land reclamation, turning swamp into land and then selling it, because at that point you have free land that you didn't even need to buy. So of course you're going to make a profit off of it. This is, in many cases, it tells you everything, right? You're creating land where there wasn't any. There's going to be some ecological repercussions because of that. And of course, if you fast forward to today and how there's more and more development in places, most of them coastal, like Miami, sand is also a key ingredient of asphalt, and it's a key ingredient of concrete production. So it's kind of enveloped in many ways, and kind of became the lens and the way to really kind of from there refract out and really think about all of the implications, not just of this resource, but how when you look at just one resource, you can really kind of gain focus. And so after I felt I had, and we because really this was a community project, we had kind of gotten a grasp of how we got there, then I felt I was able to turn my focus on to where I was, and the present. And so with that, I decided to focus on government itself and think of local government in particular as a medium unto itself. And so when I was thinking about what art can really bring to a municipal environment, I felt that reflection was a kind of antithesis, or actually more so a kind of what's the word I'm looking for? A respite and a kind of antidote to a lot of what I saw why I saw a lot of issues were coming out of, and in government, everyone actually similar. Maybe Rachel, you could speak to this. Everyone in nonprofits, similarly in local government, are overworked, in many cases underpaid, and they're oftentimes putting out fires, and they just don't have enough time, and so it's a reactive kind of position. And so what I felt art could do was to create the space for the opposite, space for reflection, moments of and reflection in many ways. In this case, I'd say two big ways are reflecting back onto the city itself. And so you create kind of a foil or a mirror. And then again, this kind of space for reflection, for pause.
I'm just going to jump in and say that I feel like all nonprofits need this department. So yeah, I definitely think that's an important one. I even thinking about it now, you know, after like our visit and looking at your slides again, it's like, that just makes so much sense, you know, that we, you know, nonprofits, all profits, people in general, like we sort of need that time to really understand like what we need to be doing, what we need to be moving forward, and what we've done in the past. So it's really nice to sort of see the trajectory of your work move that way.
Thanks. Yeah, I think in a time where, I mean, especially nonprofits, and I think similarly local governments are kind of choked more and more financially. These kinds of methods of thinking and looking at the work that you all do is flowing away. I would argue that, yeah, I would agree with you. Yeah, I think this came out of a need that I saw, and I think it's only getting worse. So of course, as any department, the foil part kind of came into play for the kind of the way the materiality of the piece. Like, what is it? We need a main office. We need a space. And so the main office of the Department of Reflection was created and opened about a year ago. It's now hopefully going to pop up again. We'll see. And what you see is on the images to the left are the space inside, which then you see on the right is the space behind the sculpture by Tom Cicluna. And again, Laurentia Strauss's kind of participatory work. In this case, it was a work called The Advice Bike. The building itself is this amazing abandoned auditorium that kind of just sits in the middle of like pristine Miami Beach and has been abandoned for something like 2 decades. And I was more than happy to fill it and use it as the main office of the Department of Reflection. I created a 16-foot in diameter conference table, which also doubled as a stage. And the space itself was a kind of, office space meets participatory exhibition. We had a continuation of projects that I had started with local artists within the Sand Project. And so we would kind of push those projects even further. And then we brought in new collaborators, and a lot of, all 4 of these images you see here were new commissioned lectures in the right, a piece of fiction in the left bottom, a performance featuring a documentary film by Sasha that's in the bottom right corner, and Bowtie, or how they go by, in this case, really B. Tymond, giving a lecture about, well, okay, so in Spanish it's Propuesta a la Ciudad de Miami Beach para la zonificación municipal de bienes inmuebles ideológicos. So ideological and immovable goods they are here trying to make a case for the zonification of like people's ideological like yearnings, to, you know, again, to like, how can art help a municipality and better serve its residents, let's say. And to speak further to the kind of ins and outs particular to the city, I would like to bring on Elizabeth Wheaton. If I call you Betsy, I'm sorry. I just got so used to it. There you go.
I actually put my name up as Betsy.
Oh, good. Old habit.
I know. It's you know, watching you go through the presentation, it makes my heart fill with so much joy, as well as I feel like there was so many moments that I didn't take more advantage of, and it makes me really sad because it was such a special moment in time that, you know, especially now with COVID and the pandemic, it's like, will we ever have that chance again to bring people together in that way? So I'm really thankful that we had that, and it's a little bittersweet because it was a beautiful moment, but I wish we had more of it. So, and I wish I had myself, you know, you talking about like engagement. There is, yeah, like it was such an opportunity that I wish that I had taken more advantage of, because how often does a local municipality have an artist that's with them for 2 years? So, I mean, you definitely have changed my life, and I thank you for that. And just seeing that again, I see, it's true. It really, it's just like you forget the nuance, right? You forget the things that you didn't realize in the moment, and you're just like, wow, that moment is still impacting me in what I do and how I do today.
Geez, well, my notes are completely useless after that.
Can I jump in actually and ask a question to Elizabeth and you, Misa? Like, how did the collaboration with the city like come together? Like, where did that come from? And maybe you can talk about the background of that a little bit too.
Want me to start? Do you want to start?
Yeah, you can start, because I mean, I wasn't there. I applied to be considered, so
yeah, I mean, it was definitely news to me. I got a call from our tourism and culture team, and they said, oh, you know, we got this night art challenge. We're working with Art Center South Florida. We'd like for you to be on an evaluation committee. Are you okay with that? I was like, okay, yeah, I guess so. Not really understanding fully what I was getting into. And I think, you know, I get a link, there's like 100 artist proposals. And remember, I'm used to reviewing, like, for example, this weekend, I spent, you know, hours reviewing architectural and engineering proposals where, you know, they're talking about their qualifications, you know, how many projects they've done in the coastal environment, you know, who on staff can do permitting and engineering. Very different than artist proposals, which are, you know, they were in many different areas, and it's just like, here's the work that we've done, and it's like, how does this fit in with city government? So it was kind of like, I didn't really know what I was getting into, but after, there was 3 of us on the review panel, Brandy from our arts and culture, Natalia, and myself, and it was clear at the end that Misael was the one. I think all 3 of us were just like, perfection. You know, it just, Misael's personality, the fact that he or they were from South Florida, their work had presence in South Florida, was relevant, was dealing with issues, you know, the flood relief piece. It was just, for me, that really spoke, because I'm getting these pumps permitted. I'm trying to quickly look at the low-lying areas and be like, all right, how from an environmental perspective can we get these pumps operating so that we're not flooding streets, but also not impacting the environment? Then it's like, well, wait a minute, it's an art piece. So I was, you know, just very intrigued with that. And yeah, and it kind of it just happened really, really fast. And then all of a sudden, Misael and I were trying to figure out what this meant, because I mean, for me, it was definitely out of my typical comfort zone, but I also loved the fact that I could think in a different place than I normally was used to.
Yeah, I think to that I think we both really experienced this in time. It was just like we didn't have enough time. I mean, that's like always the case. I mean, it was in some cases it was like impossible to get a hold of you for like a week when you were like super busy, which happens because like I said, you were all so overworked and doing such important work. But any kind of relationship like this that is trying to think outside of the box is just going to require way more time than you could have ever imagined. And I was so lucky to get that extra year, because that's when the work really happened. You know, that's when I am, you know, having like with Susie, who's the assistant city manager. I mean, like that's when I was like in a room with her and we're actually like having a discussion, you know. Yeah, I was curious. The one question that I think is still like you haven't touched on, like, I don't know. I still felt that, yeah, like I wanted I still would like want to engage more with so many more of your coworkers. And I felt that maybe there are things that you saw that I just didn't see. And I don't know if you could remember anything in particular that there's no way I would have heard this or known this, that like the work, like even if it was just a passing comment or actually you saw something, maybe it's something more tangible that you saw something in and maybe there isn't anything, but I'm just curious with your coworkers in particular, or with like I don't know. Because it was just something that was like also learning on the job. This like, how do we even keep track of everything? Like, how do we, like this engagement between an artist and the municipality is just, it's so learning on the job that like the effects of it are just even kind of like, they're gone before you even realize it. I don't know.
I mean, I think one, that the time was too short. So I think the two of us were learning, and then all of a sudden it was done. I think for me, it was a challenge because I was trying to grasp what this meant, what I needed to do as I'm putting out immediate fires. And then also not trying to like shake the boat too much, making sure that you can do your work and you're buffered so that it's like, all right, everything here is good. Because it's, you know, I mean, right now, like even today on Veterans Day, dealing with residents just so angry. And, you know, you don't know even, you know, sometimes the triggers are just so small in what you think, but it's like, you don't know what's going to make people up in arms. So I think I was always trying to balance that. So from my end, like, okay, how do we get this going, but also make sure that everyone's happy, not making anyone upset? Because, you know, for example, with both projects, we worked with Public Works to move the sand, move the material, get the sandbag machine, move the pump that was in front of the rotunda. So trying to be like, you know, you have a number of favors that you have to like be like, all right, can I ask for this favor? And that means I'm not going to be able to ask for a favor later. So like there was a bit of balancing, like, all right, making sure I don't piss anyone off. Because they did something that they're like, why was I doing that? This doesn't make any sense. So kind of trying to like explain through it. Because again, like depending on the department, the way that people think can be very different, right? Like I think I deal a lot with engineers, though I'm not an engineer. So I know I have to change and temper the way that I present ideas and present problems, because I want them to consider the environmental implications and bring that in to their work. And so I think that's something that takes time and it takes energy, and then, you know, bringing in the creativity and artist side is just this whole other piece that I didn't fully understand. So it was like this balancing act. And I think, you know, from my team, I think the challenge became my time was so limited, and I was constantly being pulled. And then all of a sudden, my team members were like, well, what is, you know, we don't fully understand what you're doing. And I think one of the challenges with the sand amphitheater theater arena was that, you know, I wish that I engaged the environmental team more in the process, because I think I understood, or at least was somewhat understanding the bigger picture, where I think for my team, they were like not really getting it. And I think with the Department of Reflection moving into the rotunda, having the conference table, holding meetings in that space, it began to make everything more real and tangible. And I think that's when there started to be like clicks, like, okay, we got this. And I saw it as a way to team build, which was something that as a manager, I needed to be working on, because we are overworked. We're constantly putting out fires, and there aren't those moments to really bring people together and reflect, like the Department of Reflection. We don't ever take that moment and stop and breathe. And it's definitely something, you know, nonprofits, local government, that we need to do, because otherwise you're going down a trajectory that could be completely wrong. And you're not connecting with the people that are making it happen. And in the end, like, it's these relationships which make life. This is where we spend most of our time. And I'm hoping that in the near future, Misael can come back and recreate the Department of Reflection, reinstate it, because it was definitely those 2 years, it was a highlight. And again, looking back, I see even more how important it was to the work that we do. Yeah, I could talk forever, so you can also interrupt me if I'm talking too much.
This is being recorded.
What?
It's on tape that you want the department to come back. So, well, I think we're gonna leave it at that with you, Betsy, just to make time for everyone. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I do have a question though, and I'm sorry to have one. Jenna, you were wearing a mask for flood relief. And it's just like, it's like we see masks now and you're just like, oh, obviously. But the fact that that was 2017, I'd love to hear like how and why. And was it the diesel?
I mean, it was basically the diesel, because I was like operating the pump, so the exhaust, when I go around the back, it was just like right in my face. But it's funny, like you're saying that, and I was watching myself with the mask on, and it's become so normal. Like sometimes I find myself in bed with the mask on because, you know, I'm like, what's going on? You know, but it is really funny to see that in retrospect. It's like, whoa. But yeah, it was the diesel, totally.
Okay, thank you.
But actually, there was another thing. I think now that I'm thinking about it, I felt it kind of added to this feeling of like apocalypticness, which wasn't necessarily part of the piece. But like in my performative experience, I was like, yeah, like the future world, if we don't fix all this stuff, you know, could become a place where we all have to wear masks. So.
I was just
here we are today,
bringing up this image that you could kind of see the mask there. Okay, I'm gonna just kind of move on. I don't want us to run out of time. But thanks again, Betsy. You're the best. So I had this slide up, but I think I'm just gonna kind of skip it. This just briefly. This is a kind of project that I think really well encapsulated the work that we did with artists at the department. This was a workshop by a local artist called Befriending Mangroves. But to kind of go into like what the process was in regards to a kind of like what it was like to to engage with the Department of Reflection for the first time and to really kind of take advantage and I think really get like what the space was and what like, and when I say space, I mean headspace, framing, and of course the literal space of the main office of the Department of Reflection. And I think that was really clear with Julian Pardo. You're unmuted now, so if you feel free to talk. Hi, Julian, it's good to see you.
Nice to meet you guys.
And I think with you, like I said, it was like we didn't really know each other all that well yet. We were definitely acquaintances, and Julian is an amazing artist and a really like a valued member of the community. The more time that since moving back to Miami after school in Chicago, has just appears more and more because he's so giving and always and really like always shows up. And I think this piece also is proof of that, called El Ritual del Sancocho. I said that with some Puerto Rican twang, which is basically the ritual of the Sancocho. And what you see in these images is this space that kind of took over and was kind of in the background. Then it was like the main thing for an entire day, basically, that we cooked this meal. And maybe you can go into it, Julian.
Of course. So the El Ritual del Sancocho is an idea I have for a long time, missing my family and my childhood traditions from Colombia, and recognizing the strong immigrant population in Miami. I want to give the community a moment to reflect on traditions from their home. I create an interactive performance inspired by Colombian Paseo de Olla, meaning a pot outing. Usually a casual family day trip to the river organized around to cooking and eating of one large sancocho soup. Friends and family bring raw ingredients like green plantains, yuca, potato, cilantro, meat, and prepare together this meal. I had this idea on the back of my mind for a long time. And when I walked into the Department of Reflection, I saw this giant round table and I knew it was perfect to host a large gathering. During the day, I brought the ritual to the Department of Reflection, and we spent time preparing, cooking, drinking, dancing, blessing the food, and sharing memories. Through the 4-part performance, I express Colombian culture, specifically the importance of family and collaboration. The large soup pot was placed in the center of the table, and in part 1, everyone helped to prepare it. And in part 2, we blessed the sancocho, and everyone contributed individually to getting on the table and placing an ingredient to a pot with like a spoon like this, which I bought in Colombia from like an artisan. And as it cooked, music played and everyone danced and toast ahead of the meal. So I just want to say, once again, thank you, Misael, to the Department of Reflection hosting this performance and including me in this artist visit.
No, thank you. I mean, this was the last day of programming when we had this site in particular. It also became this like exit ritual. I think for me, it kind of is such a like beautiful example of not only, like I said, like you kind of like a community member understanding that this was like a space for you, which just like you immediately got. And we were like at this other like space called Bookleggers, and we were just talking. And then 10 minutes later, I'm like, yeah, like you're doing it on October 27th, like like done. And then the other thing is that this piece, like offhand, it's like, what does this have to do with climate change? But migration is becoming more and more of an issue. As our climates in certain parts of the world are getting worse and worse. And migration leads to diaspora, it leads to trauma. and it leads to creativity as well. And things that are essential to that are food, culture, ways of coming together.
Like when you change and you leave behind like your extended family, for example, and like you can see them for like 4 or 5 or almost 8 years, and like you start missing all those gatherings, you start missing all like those like traveling, like go to a day on a river and like everyone's go bathe in the river, drinking aguardiente, and like having all this like family together, and even like updating lives. That's pretty much like my point on also like the sancocho is this like how you can update lives into with a stranger, and like Mike became like a big family together. And like that's when you arrive to a new country, that's something you encounter as an immigrant. People who help you all the time, even though there is completely strangers. So I wanted to bring that out and like bring that into like a meal, and how can I like with a meal express what I've been living in this country for the past whatever like 18, 20 years. And that's kind of the result of it. And like the beauty of it is just like we prepare the sancocho like for the entire day, as you said, and like the process of it, it was also an experience through the other things that it was happening in the programming that day.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I'm gonna use that as a segue now, because as that meal was being prepared, things were happening. Someone read a story, someone read a poem, and you're like, as the day is going on, you're smelling more and more of the sancocho. And
for example, in the center photo that you guys seen, they were meditating and doing another like activity while the sancocho was like boiling and like cooking. So imagine like smelling like an amazing soup while you meditating. So it was beautiful.
And another of the events that was taking place was a workshop by Jenna Balf. Thank you, Julian.
Thank you very much, guys.
So I'm gonna move on. For the sake of time, this is some excerpts from our year-end report. As a department, we put out a year-end report. You can download it on the website, departmentofreflection.org. And Jenna Balf, not meant to do that. Jenna Balf, you can see here, once again, has been a longtime collaborator. You see her here manning a pump once again. This work in particular was put on during Miami Art Week outside of the Untitled Art Fair. And of course, with Jenna, I think it's important to note like what it's like when you've collaborated many times and you understand that this other person, if things go wrong, because the work is time-based, the work is performative, someone, a little baby might show up and a child might show up, and something might happen and you have to pivot, or, so many things can happen. And like when you're working with someone that you've worked with many times, you kind of trust them and you know that they're going to kind of maintain the core of like what you're trying to say and do with the work. And that's what I have with Jenna more than probably anybody. This is a slide of the workshop that she put together. I think before I'm going the wrong way. Before I bring you on, Jenna, I'm just going to show this this documentation real quick. Hi, Jenna.
Hi.
Hey. Just, I guess also, yeah, I think we should just get into it in terms of, I think it's, in having seen a work prior, it's somewhat clear to see like what that work is about. It's a similar kind of Sisyphean gesture. In this case, instead of bringing water up from the bay and shooting it back out, the water is going from one reflecting pool to the other. And so it's kind of a kind of bizarro water feature that would be in a kind of meditative space courtyard, let's say on another planet. I don't know. So I wanted to ask you, if you could speak, if you could speak to like what it's like when and we like one of these slides here that I put in here is me in one of your pieces. So it's reciprocal. We work in each other's, we're in each other's works.
Yes. Yeah, what is it like? I mean, it's really awesome, I'll tell you, because it's tough out there, and I think finding people that are like-minded, and not only like-minded but very open and giving is not easy to do. So I think it's something that's worth celebrating, and I'm just really happy that we always, we really support each other, and I feel like we remind each other why it is in fact important to celebrate such relationships and, make art about them and make art about other relationships and relationships forming, kind of what Julian's work is also about. I mean, I think there's a lot of synergy with, people that you involve in your art, in that we're all kind of, that's really like something we're focused on. And I think through the years of working with you, it's, we've developed this kind of unspoken language, like there's a developing artwork that exists just like in the air around us, so it's almost like at any time, if someone was like, hey, you guys, like, ham it up, it's like we could, and it would be just like a dialogue that's been ongoing, but that's immediately relatable to the space and time that we're in, because it's just that thick, it's like that deep, and
kind of like people who are in an improv troupe together.
yeah, it's exactly, it's like an improv troupe that's just like ongoing. And in the flood relief piece, not flood relief, wait, which one? Reflection pools, sorry. That had an interesting layer because the other operator was Dennis, my husband. So, talk about reflection. And there's like multiple relationships going on, that echo the sculptural piece and the meaning behind it, because there's like this communication between me and Dennis that's happening, where we're trying to like reflect each other's movements and create this narrative. There's the pools emptying and refilling, and then there's music that's like we choose whether or not to allow it to play. And then there's Misael's presence, who's kind of like out of the work but still observing the work, so we're still kind of also like checking in with their needs, and like what they're wanting people to experience from it. So it became this kind of like living metaphor, for how we're constantly navigating each other's states of being, and just how we see ourselves in others' eyes. So it was really interesting for me.
Once again, I'm really glad this is being recorded, because I'm gonna have to get some pieces of that for future reference. That was really nice, and I think that's really. I mean, we keep putting each other in each other's works for
Yeah.
a reason, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think that was kind of all I wanted to touch on. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to ask Rachel, or
I actually was just curious, and like, if I missed this, I'm so sorry, but when, how long have you all been working together? Like, how did you meet, and where did the relationship sort of form? Or if that's a private story, you don't know.
No,
That's okay.
Jenna.
It's great. We were dating. So that's how this started. And, that shifted, and we were just like, wow, this is like, we should just stay in relationships somehow and just like move forward and keep this growing and moving. So, and that was maybe like 8 years ago.
I don't want to think about it. Yeah, it was
Like 8 years ago. Oh my gosh.
And Jenna also, she's a mover. She's well versed in contact improv, and would put when we were dating, she would do classes for yoga and contact improv. So it was just like, that was like something that, once we got over the like icky whatever, we're broken up phase, it was like, I have to be in your work. You have to keep being in my work, because no one's going to get it better than you in terms of like body placement, cues, all these things that it just was natural. Yeah. And there's so many like other works that we've been in, like they have, Jenna's the lead singer of Donzi, which I would say is the best band in Miami right now.
Thanks.
Yeah, and they were also the house band of Sand. So I'm a little biased. But I'll show up in performances that they put up. I'll be on stage pretending to play guitar, and then all of a sudden I smash it and I run off stage as like gag. Or, just like we're always showing up in like fun ways in each other's work.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's serious, like the work we're showing today, but not always.
Totally.
Cool. Well, that's a good story. So I appreciate knowing it.
For sure.
Looks like we have a question.
Oh,
I
great.
know you both travel a lot as part of your practice. Sorry if I missed this, but how does that affect your ideas about your work and its impact? From Jacqueline.
Oh, nice. Do you have, does anything come to mind for you, Jenna?
Yeah, for me, like when I'm traveling, right now I'm in San Francisco, for example, I'm recording, and I mean, it just gives me more to think about, I really love walking cities. Like, I don't go by maps. I mean, I do because I get lost. But I mean, like, I allow myself to wander, and I find like I just observe people and I observe situations, and it really helps create the work in my mind as I'm experiencing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say, to add to that, being based in Miami as an artist is very difficult sometimes. It's a city that is very kind of honed in on the market, in ways that can be fruitful, but in ways that can be really frustrating for artists who aren't as market based. You can see as like our work is performative, it's time based. It needs kind of alternative modes of expressing and moving through the world that aren't always immediately understood by capitalism. So Miami is really difficult for that, but it's also why it can be so fruitful, because the city is kind of creates this it becomes this character in the play of the work. It becomes this like this antagonist. It becomes it can be an enemy, but like it can be many things. And I think that is really best understood when you leave Miami, when you kind of gain perspective on how particular it is to be there in this city that is very late capitalist. It's like Dubai and San Francisco and Latin America all wrapped into one, and you need perspective. You need to get away to understand that sometimes.
That might be a good segue for you, Misa, into talking a little bit about being at BMIS and how that's sort of been over the past few months and what you've been working on here. So
definitely. So thank you, Jenna. Since COVID, like everyone else, I had to pivot, and I was commissioned by a local organization called Commissioner in Miami to put together a video work. And so what I did was I kind of gathered information and research that I had been working on in Miami for a project with the city, and I kind of funneled it all into what I called a dispatch, or fieldwork dispatches is the line of work. And so this one took place in Miami Beach. And so while I've been here is kind of allowing well, okay. So after a couple more months in Miami, I decided to go on a road trip. I think I wasn't alone in that COVID kind of did some, like we were all, going through a bit of, stir crazy amongst many other feelings. And I needed to get out, and I found a safe way to do it. And so I went on a road trip for about a couple months, and I landed in Omaha after that. And so since coming here and being in BMIS, I've allowed this kind of love for the road to really just kind of fully kind of take me over, and really kind of focus that research that I've done on infrastructure, such as relates to climate crisis mitigation or gentrification, and focus that kind of energy on automobile infrastructure. And so I've been really delving into roads, the history of roads, the highway system here in the US, and I've been putting together a script for a second fieldwork dispatches, which will really dive into the history of roads and highway system. And I also, while I was on this road trip, I put together these works. They're not quite sculptures, they're kind of like addendums to a thought process that I can kind of pull out of my car and put up and kind of gauge reaction and test in time. And so the 5 signs you see here are kind of imperfect ways that I've been kind of poking at this infrastructure, and also kind of delving into issues of the time. And I like some of them more than others. But this was before coming to BMIS, and since being here, I designed my own, as opposed to kind of putting it through the processes that the sign making road like capitalist structures provide me. I actually designed my own for the first time, which is the sign you see on the right. And the sign you see on the left is one that I'm also going to be taking along with me now to kind of investigate the national history of redlining. And so both these signs will accompany me on the next leg of this road trip. So I'm actually going west from here, and I'm not sure where I'll end up, but yeah, that's kind of the 2 veins of like research that I've been working on.
I haven't told you this, but as I'm looking at the new sign that you created, the one on the right, to me, it's just like, that's exactly how I feel this year. That is my feeling, in a nutshell. So I really appreciate, I'm probably sure that other people on this Zoom also feel that same way.
How I feel, so it's definitely coming out of that. Yeah.
It's just it's the diagram of the year, I think. Well, cool. Yeah, I mean, it's been really great. I think, having you here, and especially, you being able to kind of continue this work and make a new sign while you're at BMIS, obviously, but also, kind of I would say performance, but going out with the Department of Reflection on Indigenous Peoples Day, and where you sort of decided to stage that. don't know, intervention maybe is a good way to call it, was really great. So I'm glad that we got to have you here for that. I think, how about us? If anyone has any questions for Misa about the department, their work, or for any of the collaborators, please chat them in, because we'd love to hear from you if you have any thoughts or questions or just comments. But if not, we can also wrap it up because it's been over an hour, but it's been super fun. So, oh, wait, here we go. How could the signs exist in an institutional setting as well? That's a great question. Thank you.
That's something I've been thinking about a lot. The signs are like weird for me because they're very like Instagram friendly. They're very, they kind of have an easiness to them that makes me feel really uneasy. And institutions are actually, I've had a couple that I'm trying to work with to put them in parking lots and like around the spaces. But the question keeps coming up in terms of like, should they go inside? And definitely for one, I'm like, these are not sculptures. So I have thoughts of maybe if the institution is like working, like willing to work with me to like put the signs up, like maybe when they're retired, so to speak, and put them as ephemeral. I also took obviously lots of video and images of them. Something that I'm always weary of, but I think less so with video in regards to how they become objects unto themselves. I think if that's made clear with like a meaty like label, I'd be okay with that. But I think more than anything, I'm like waiting to see what happens with them before I do that. Because I don't know, if an institution asks me to work with them, I'm like, I want to make something new for you. Like I don't want to just give you something. So yeah. I don't know if that answers the question, but
yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, I mean, I think that I love that idea of like sort of retiring them, like thinking about, like when you're in a sports arena and you sort of like see these like retired jerseys of, players and things like that, like sort of has this, like hopefully if they're retired, that means maybe things have changed in like a positive way. And sort of the reflection again, I think comes forth in that. So that's a really nice way to kind of use that word actually. So
yeah, I mean, like I said, like I use them to kind of learn like as I'm going, like I'm using them as a tool. So it's kind of like, it's also very personal. And at some point, I'm kind of done with the stolen land sign, for instance. I don't know, I'm going to go out west and I feel like there's going to be some beautiful scenery that I'm going to have to put it up. But for the most part, I feel like I'm done with that one. So for instance, like, and it's a very personal thing. I realize that.
Thanks, AG. Well, I think that's a really good place to end, maybe. Thank you all for sharing your time with us and your work and thoughts and reflections on Misa's practice. So this has been really fun. Really appreciate it. And yeah. Thank you all for joining us. Please join us tomorrow night do a little dance party on Twitch. So thanks again. Everyone have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.